Welcome back, bonbons. It's currently cherry season, so let's make some brandied cherries you can use in bonbons. The very first thing you should do is protect your counters. No matter how careful you are, this is going to be very messy. I'm using a sheet of acetate, but you can use whatever you want that you don't mind getting stained. Grab your very clean container. I'm using a glass canning jar. They're going to be stored in this for quite a while, so use something sturdy. And your fresh cherries that have been washed and dried. You can use sweet or sour cherries depending on your preference, but I always use sweet dark cherries. You'll also need granulated sugar and brandy. I'm using this Christian Brothers brandy. It was around $20 for the bottle, and you can make several quantities of this recipe with one bottle. This one has a nice brandy flavor, but there is quite an alcohol afterburn to it. That will go away as it ages with the cherries. You don't need to use something expensive like Hennessy. It's not going to make much of a difference in the end. Obviously, don't use something really cheap and nasty though, because gut rot will always taste like gut rot. I've tried making it with more expensive brandies like this Grand Marnier before, and the flavor is lost to the cherries and sugar. You will also need something to remove the cherry pits with. I'm going to use a cherry pitter, but I'll also show you a way to do it without. Usually, I'm all for saving the world and reducing plastic, but gloves are necessary, unless you want your hands to look like you spent time in a slaughterhouse after this. Also, a small saucepan and water. Let's get started. Unfortunately, you can't be lazy and leave the fruits intact. The stones in stone fruits naturally contain cyanide compounds. While it's fine if you accidentally swallow a pit, according to the Missouri Poison Center, you shouldn't crush the stones and consume them. While we're not crushing them, it's best that the stones aren't soaking in the same fluid as the cherry flesh. Food safety and all that. If you don't have a cherry pitter, you can use a sharp knife and a chopstick. Remove the stem and then make a small X-shaped cut on the top and the bottom. Take the chopstick and while holding the cherry gently, poke out the pit. I did it this way the first time I tried this recipe. It is very time consuming, much more so than using a pitter. But if you don't want to invest in a single-purpose tool, this is an alternative option. I ended up splitting this one in half, but it's possible to do it and keep it whole with a little practice. Back to the pitter. It took me a few cherries to remember what the best position in the pitter is. Cherry season is only once a year after all. But anyway, if you put the top of the cherry in the cut part and the pit poker through the bottom, the cherries are less likely to split open and leave a cleaner hole. I'm going to do this until the jar is as full as possible without crushing any of the cherries. If you'd like to leave the stems on for decorative reasons, you can. In that case, just remove the pit through the side and leave the stem intact and put the whole thing in the jar. I'm not doing that though, so off with the stem. Keep an eye out for any cherries with bad spots. You don't want to introduce any mold or rot into the jar. Now that the jar is full, I'm going to make the heavy syrup. Bring the water and sugar to a bare simmer and stir until it's completely dissolved. Remove from the heat and allow to cool until it's just warm. Then add the brandy. Fill the jar as full as possible. There is still a rather large air bubble, so I'm going to add a little more brandy mix. Store it in the fridge. I let mine sit for at least 3 months before using them. This is basically a cherry liqueur at that point, so once you've used all the cherries, the cherry brandy makes for some really nice cocktails. Waste not, want not. That's the end of this fairly simple recipe. I hope you're able to make your own before the end of cherry season, and with that, it's time to say goodbye again. But parting is such sweet sorrow, so subscribe to make sweets with me again. Bye bye, bonbons.